and we're going to wrap up our session. Last but not least, we have Jess Slade with us today, and she's going to be presenting on the invasive plant management in sensitive areas, methods for Short's goldenrod recovery. Jess is the Bluegrass Region Preserve Manager for the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. Her work focuses on managing rare plant communities in some of the state's highest quality natural areas and best remaining examples of grassland and glade ecosystems. Previously, she has managed natural areas at the Morris Arboretum in southeastern Pennsylvania and worked as a horticulturalist in private and public gardens in New York City. She holds a bachelor's in art and art history from New York University and is a master's degree candidate at the University of Pennsylvania, where she studies natural resource management. All right, Jess, take it away.
Okay, hello, and thank you so much for having me. Today, I'm going to be talking about managing invasive species in sensitive areas on state nature preserves where we have really high quality plant communities, and I'll be highlighting one project in particular that's currently underway. I just want to start by briefly introducing where I work, which is the Office of Kentucky Nature Preserves. We are a state agency in the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and we're responsible for several programs related to the state's natural heritage, including recognizing, conserving, and restoring rare and endangered plants, which I'm going to be talking about how we do that by managing invasive species. We also maintain a database of rare species in the state that can be accessed online through the Kentucky Biological Assessment Tool and used for conservation planning. And finally, we manage about 25,000 acres of land through our state nature preserve system. And the site I'll be talking about today, let me turn on my pointer, is located up here in Robertson County, which is in the outer bluegrass region of Kentucky. This nature preserve is actually part of Blue Licks Battlefield State Resort Park, and we manage it in collaboration with the state parks and the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund. We're actively managing 4 areas within this park where the endangered species Short's goldenrod occurs or has been documented historically. So today I'll be talking mostly about this tract, which is the Smoot tract. I realize this is not a forest, but hopefully some of these strategies will relate to forest management. This particular tract is an old hayfield with a history of grazing, and it's surrounded by early successional forest. Despite being pretty degraded with a bunch of different invasive species, the site hosts a large population of Short's goldenrod. And we're in the process of restoring the site with the goal of restoring the community associates of the Short's goldenrod through site preparation, seed collection, and eventually seeding the site with other native species. So the significance of the site is primarily the Short's goldenrod, which is a federally listed species. It's nearly endemic to the area around Blue Licks, and it occurs in limestone glades, oak hickory woodlands, and pastures. It's associated with historic grazing and trampling by bison that moved through the area in the past. In addition to the goldenrod, there's also several state species of concern that occur in the community with the goldenrod that aren't located on this site, but are on neighboring tracts. And as we restore the community, we're hopeful that this will be additional habitat for those species as well. And I just want to point out that in our restoration process, we're trying not to harm any native species that are occurring on the area, or do as little harm as possible so that those can produce seed and help to cover the ground where we're managing invasive species. So part of the first step in figuring out a management plan for our invasives is just identifying what's there on the site. All of the species that are there are pretty common. sure most of you are well acquainted with these species. I'll start by talking about the perennial threats. There's a good deal of crown vetch, and tall fescue almost completely covers the site, which is providing a lot of competition for the Short's goldenrod. There's also a little bit of Sericea lespedeza on the site, which is a small amount, but has the potential to become a really big problem if we let it go. So these are priority species for management. And due to their large populations on the site and the species biology, unfortunately, chemical control is definitely necessary. I've separated the biennial threats though, because we can treat these a little bit differently. These species are ones that will die to the plants will die to the ground after they bloom and produce seed. So because of that, our management goal is to reduce seed set and then hopefully try to exhaust the seed bank of these species on the site. So because of those goals, we can use a combination of mechanical and chemical methods for control. And our restoration goals are to overall improve habitat for the Short's goldenrod, increase the number of stems of this goldenrod, increase biodiversity on the site, and of course, decrease our non-native and invasive species pressure. So you can see on the bottom here, I've created a really basic 3-year management plan of how we're approaching management on the site to prepare it for seeding. And right now we're just at the very beginning of year 2. Because of the sensitive nature of the site, we've developed a species level approach to management. So the goal is to manage the target species at the time when they are most vulnerable with the most effective chemical, but also while keeping in mind the potential impacts on the Short's goldenrod. So I chose selective chemicals for most of the treatment on the site, either broadleaf selective in the cases of crown vetch and the lespedeza, or a grass-specific herbicide, clethodim, which we used on the fescue. And the timing of the treatment was basically at the time when it's actively growing or most vulnerable. And then a few of the species, the Queen Anne's lace, the white sweet clover, and the teasel are all over the site. So if we tried to manage them with chemicals, we would be spraying a lot of the Short's goldenrod as well. So we're using primarily mechanical management for that, coming in when they're in full bloom and cutting them to the ground to try to reduce seed sets. We use a few other strategies on state nature preserves and at Blue Licks for management, including mowing prior to invasive management so that we can more easily access the area. And then we'll mow again before we seed so that we can reduce competition for those species that we're seeding in. We've been burning slash on another one of our sites for the same reason, for easier access, and also to help prevent woody succession and just be able to maintain the state there. And then finally, we're using prescribed fire. We're going to be going in to do a prescribed fire this spring on our site, mostly in order to clear thatch and stimulate seed germination of the invasive species, with the goal to try to exhaust the seed bank and follow up with management. And I've been working really closely with our plant conservation team on this nature preserve and on other nature preserves where we have active management happening so that we can monitor changes that are caused by management on our sites. And in this case, I've been working with our botanist, Heidi Braunreiter, who created a couple of, they installed with the whole team a couple of different plots on our site. The first one you can see here is a pretty complicated plot design, but basically it's used to document changes in the stem and flowering density of the Short's goldenrod, and also document the presence of non-native invasive species and percent cover of those species. so that we can see how that changes over time. And then the second type of plot that we're using is called a CVS, or Carolina Vegetation Survey Plot, which will be used to compare changes in species composition over time. You can see up in here in the top right corner, one of our botanists, Devin Roger, posing for a picture in one of those CVS plots. And in the first year, we've already seen quite a bit of initial success. Hopefully we'll see more moving forward. On our plots at the Smoot Tract, which is the one under discussion, we saw the number of stems for the shorts goldenrod increase by 52% in that one season. And the number of flowering stems increased by 3.5 times, which is really promising moving forward. And then in addition to that, the average cover values for all of the non-native invasive species that occur on that plot decreased, and the fescue decreased by up to 80% overall. And just a note on that, that was actually measured prior to our fall follow-up herbicide treatment on the fescue. And some other general observations that we saw on the site were a noticeable increase in native species like butterfly weed and Lobelia spicata and bee balm throughout the site, specifically following the fescue management this spring.
Jessica, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And here are a couple of photos just to show what it looked like in 2019 versus 2020. And these are slightly different vantage points, but in the same areas of the field. As you can see, more goldenrod here on the right. It seems to be released specifically by the fescue treatment. And in conclusion, we're seeing a lot of initial success in invasive species reduction, and with that, an increase in the shorts goldenrod. So hopefully that'll keep happening moving forward. And then I know that this is a really aggressive and time-consuming approach, the spot treatments and follow-up management. It's definitely not appropriate for every site, but in this case, with the status of the shorts goldenrod as a federally listed species, we think that it's worth it, and maybe would be something to consider on your sites as well. And I think that part of the reason why we're seeing such success is just consideration of management timing and selectivity of chemicals. There's a few unknowns, a few questions that I have will be yet to answered are, how long will the seed bank persist for these non-native species? Like, how long are we going to see them coming up there? I mean, probably for a long time, but I don't know how much management is going to be needed in the coming years. And then how will the community respond without this invasive pressure? And then another note is that we have a native but aggressive goldenrod on the site, Solidago altissima. And I'm not really sure what kind of challenges that might pose for restoring biodiversity to the community. So there's lots of questions, and because of that, we'll have to use an adaptive management approach moving forward. And then I didn't talk about this extensively, but here are a few references that I used when I was trying to choose the chemicals that I would use for treatment on the crown vetch and the Lespedeza cuneata. I chose aminopyrrolid to use on the crown vetch because some research has been done that suggests that many of our native species are actually tolerant to this chemical. As opposed to the Lespedeza cuneata, I used a chemical that is less specific, but will hopefully have better control in the long run. And thank you all so much for having me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions in the comments.
All right. Wow. Jess, thank you so much for all that hard work that you're out there doing. And I'm so excited to hear that it's paying off. I know you and all the other folks with nature preserves, you all are out there on the ground doing all of that hard labor. And we really appreciate the work that you're doing here in the state.
Thank you.
All righty. So that's going to wrap up our spotlight session. And so let's give a last big virtual round of applause for everybody there, and learn some really great information from all you all. So thank you. And so now, before we move on, I wanted to take a moment to mention one of our proud Kentucky sponsors and a great nonprofit organization, the Kentucky Invasive Plant Council. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So this organization was established in 2000 with the following mission: to raise awareness and promote public understanding regarding the threat posed by these invasive plants to our precious native plant communities here in Kentucky. And they also serve as an excellent educational, advisory, and technical support resource on exotics in our area. So whether you just want to learn about the invasive plant species we have here in the state, or you want to learn how to best manage them, please check out our website. You can find that here at this link. And you can become a member. We're always looking to recruit new people and join the good fight against these bad invasive plants. Jess, our last presenter, she is on the board, and myself, this is Alexandra, I am on the board as well. And then our next presenter, Dr. Ellen Crocker, is actually the president of this organization. So, not only will you get to learn about a bunch of, really informative information that you can apply in your own woodlands, you can get to meet some really great people as well. So I'm going to stop sharing this if everyone's got that information.